later, but now. Bring up all the children. Not later, right now. Bring up all the children.
Good morning and welcome back to the Now Morning Show, where on today's edition we are talking crime and how it impacts children living in at-risk communities on your Spotlight on Now.
Joining us this morning to talk about crime and how it impacts children living in at-risk communities, I want to welcome psychologist Krysta and Children's Services Associate Javed Abdool. They're both representing the Investigations and Interventions Unit of the Children's Authority. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Let me start, Javed, if you don't mind, let me start with you. Can we identify what is an at-risk community?
All right. According to a researcher, local researcher, Mr. Darius Figueroa, he would define at-risk communities as any community that has the propensity to breed criminality.
That's so broad, though.
Yes, and it is broad because any community can be termed an at-risk community because of the factors that are in the community and on the ground.
Okay, but when we talk about it generally, we're usually not talking about white-collar crime or blue-collar. We're talking like rape, murder, assault, that sort of crime, right?
And gang activity.
Gang activity. That's the type of crime that we're talking about when we usually refer to at-risk communities, yeah?
Yes.
All right, so what are the risks of children being around it? Krysta, let me jump to you, because generally, I mean, how does early, I don't want to say association, but just being present to be able to witness, whether it be crime, whether it be gun violence, gang violence, does that affect a child, and from how young?
Most definitely affects the child. So early exposure to this sort of violence and criminal activity has long-lasting and long-term effects on children, particularly when they begin seeing this from a very young age. It actually affects every aspect of a child's development, emotionally, psychologically, we find physically, socially, in all sorts of ways. Now, the type of incidents that they're exposed to, combined with the longevity of it, like how long now they've been experiencing these things, is going to affect the long-term outcomes of that child. So the main things that we will see is that they start from a very young age developing symptoms of what we call post-traumatic stress, where they're very jumpy all the time. They may act out aggressively because children, they don't really know how to cope with these kind of things that they're experiencing. They're not even sure what exactly they're experiencing. So they start becoming very aggressive. They start doing quite poorly at school. And from there, we see just a downward trajectory in their general functioning.
Okay.
What we also see is a general desensitization to crime, and this right here is what the main and the most scary effect is, where they find that these type of things and this manner of behaving is normal, and therefore they're more than likely to start picking up those behaviors as well.
All right, so Javed, let me jump back across to you. In terms of, for example, we mentioned the gangs, we mentioned, things of that nature. We talk about desensitization. Are the two related? Does the need for community in a child, I mean, children want to be loved, they want to find a place in this world, essentially. Does that oftentimes lead to dealing with the trauma that we just mentioned and looking for community, looking for a place in the world? Is that where the challenge lies, where we end up in gang situations?
That can be one of them, because children, they learn via the environment. That's that big impetus on a child's development and the way that they function. So if they live in a high risk, as the media would like to say, community, the propensity for them to get involved in crime is much higher because you have a high family involvement in gang. There's a history of the family, home abuse. These certain high-risk communities, as they like to term them, would have more of a propensity to have abuse in the home, to be of a poorer social class, to see themselves as lacking opportunities, and it's easier to get involved in a life of crime.
But what does the gang offer that would be missing? Because we're talking about it, right? And at the end of the day, you're saying that if it is we go and we find out the children doing, they want to be a part of this and they want to join this lifestyle. Why? What they have in it that So encouraging, so welcoming.
What's so encouraging about our children joining a gang is they would have a sense of family, because usually there isn't much nuclear families that come out of these communities.
Okay,
so
but the same poverty still exists, though.
It still exists.
The same trauma still exists.
And the mere fact of the way how our illicit gang operates, they are involved in activities that make money very quickly. So when these gangs make money very quickly, they kind of spread it within the community to make those who are unemployed or underemployed more empowered.
Okay, and that would also include the parents of some of these children, I imagine.
Most of the time when you look at the research and you do investigations into these child protection issues, you do realize that the parents know what is taking place in the home.
Is there any way, Krysta, for parents to be able to protect their children? I mean, they're not all parents obviously involved in, let's say, these so-called high-risk communities. Not all parents would be involved in criminal activity, and some people want to just keep their child safe, protect them from these elements. Are there ways that they can do that living within the environment?
Yes, I was definitely going to say that, and not all of these parents are involved in criminal activities. We have very hardworking people out there who are trying their best within these communities to protect their kids. One of the main ways that they can do so is to be present. And I know the first thing that people say when I say something like that is that they're working 2 jobs. It's very difficult to be present. But the thing is, it's really to focus on being actively present when you are in the home. Paying attention to your child, building bonds with your child is very important. In that way, you have open discussions with them about what's happening and talk to them about ways to protect themselves, safety plans in terms of what to do to come out of dangerous situations, things like that. Promoting education is another major way that we can protect these children within these communities.
What, any specific type of education?
All education, keeping them in school is super important. Not only that, not only making sure that they have everything that they need to go to school, but helping them when they're at home, finding ways, creative ways to ensure that they keep going to school. So focusing on education is super important. Getting them involved in sporting activities from a very young age. There's so many programs that's ongoing in these communities. Getting them involved, because sports is another way that we can, deter children from engaging in crime. Research has shown that the same type of things that they might be getting within the gang in terms of a sense of accomplishment, feeling like they're a part of a family, building their self-esteem, things like that, they can get that through sports as well as so many opportunities that comes from being good at sports.
Yeah. Most definitely, and we see that happen. We know that story time and time again, right? We've seen it happen with many athletes across the spectrum. How do parents identify if it is you're trying to be present as much as you can, but you're working 2, 3 jobs? You also need to put food on the table. You have to make sure the rent paid, the light bill paid, and you're getting minimum wage, right? So you're making sure you work as hard as you can to be able to afford a decent-ish lifestyle for you and your family. So you're not as home as often as you would like. You try to be as present as you can. How can you identify whether or not your child may or may not be involved in criminal activity when you're not there?
So there would be signs, there would definitely be signs, because a lot of these gangs, what they do as part of the initiation process is that they provide the child with a lot of gifts.
Right.
So, just seeing your kid with things that you know that you didn't give to your child is one of the main ways that you can identify that something might be happening. Changes in their behavior. I always tell parents, you are the experts in your child, and any sort of noticeable, significant change in their behavior is at least a red flag to ask a question. Getting in trouble in school for things that they might not have been getting into trouble before, that might be another factor.
I mean, their appearance will change. They may get tattoos or markings. They may start to wear insignia that signifies that they identify with a particular gang. They would change their appearance often. So those are some of the risk factors that you can determine that your child may be involved in an illicit gang.
Things like having money and they have no job.
Yes.
Things of
having the best phone, things like that. Also hanging around persons that are also known to be in these type of behaviors as well. So it's really about being aware of who your children are around.
Of course. Javed, I wanted to find out from a research perspective, what is the ratio of boys to girls that we see being involved in this criminal activity?
There were some recent statistics from the Youth Training and Rehabilitation Center recently that stated there were approximately 84 children that were housed in remand. And out of those 84 children, 4 happened to be over 18 for whatever legal reasons, and only 2 were females. So you're seeing a very high ratio of male to female.
If it's the same article we're talking about, that, but I saw that information as well. Not only were they only two females, but they were also unconvicted.
Yes, most of the children that are housed there are unconvicted.
Yeah.
How does that affect the children from a traumatic perspective? I mean, if let's say you're innocent until proven guilty, right? So you're innocent, but you're in remand because you're waiting for your case to call. And let's say you do end up being not convicted, you get innocent, as the case may be. How does that affect the child going back into the community, into society afterwards?
It really depends on that specific child. Now, I mean, being remanded there is going to come with its own challenges. However, what I will say is that some children see that as a break from their everyday life. These type of children are going through many things out there where, you know, being in a space like that, where they know that they're getting meals, they know that they have somewhere to sleep is actually better than like fighting up outside there, right? This is not to say this is the case with everybody. Of course, that's also going to be sort of a traumatic experience for some children as well, particularly those who might be there for reasons that, you know, they should not be there.
Yeah, wrong place, wrong time, or whatever the
Right.
case may be.
Right, definitely. All of these things are very traumatic, right? It affects children's development, it affects their psychological well-being. And these are, you know, this is what is adding to the cycle of crime, generational crime, right? So somewhere we need to start, you know, trying to undo this.
How are we doing it? How are we breaking the cycle?
Well, you know, it's going to take a community effort. You know, everybody needs to get on board and start doing things from when these children are very, very young. You know, ensuring that the things that they're exposed to, while, you know, there's certain things that we cannot control, exposing them to more positive things from a young age, getting them involved in things that's going to build themselves in a positive way, exposing them to positive role models. These are the type of things that we need to do from a very young age, where they don't see gangs and criminal behavior as their only way out. Because that's really the case with a lot of them, when they see it as, this is my only option to be something in life.
And that's really unfortunate if that's what you think is your only option to be something in life.
Definitely.
Ah, boy. You see, it's very interesting for me because I see it, right? Like, you see it in communities. You see people who can achieve so much, but they choose to either get into whatever lifestyle or you know, associate themselves with people of that lifestyle. Sometimes they think it's cool. How do we get them to see that it's not cool? How do we get them to be a little bit more sensitive? Because you mentioned the desensitization, right? We have movies, we have music, we have all these aspects of things that make it a little bit less sensitive. You know what I mean? We go on the internet, and everybody has access to the internet. You could go on your phone on YouTube, and your parents home or they're not home, and you could be quietly watching a murder video or whatever the case may be. How do we get them to realize that this is not just for play, that this is real life?
Well, helping them to understand from a very young age that the consequences of these things are very real. And you know, where it is that they can end up in jail or dead is real. Exposing them to persons who took a different path and achieved the same outcomes. Because the thing is, right, a lot of these children, the only outcome that they want is to have a good life, right? Have flashy things, have money, be living a good life that
but they don't want to work for it.
That's the thing. So what we need to do is show them the different opportunities and the different ways, the different paths that we can take to achieve that same goal, while understanding the severe consequences of these behaviors from a very young age. That's going to take proper parenting. It's going to take proper support from the community. It's a holistic thing.
My concern is oftentimes that the community is sometimes too far gone. Sometimes the parents don't even know better. I mean, we have such high levels of illiteracy still among some adults. So you raising children and you can't help them with their homework because you just can't, because you don't even understand what they're doing.
That's one of the major issues. Education might be a big way to get children out of it, because most of the children that we interact with in such a setting, you find that their literacy is very low. So you would find that they're 13, 14, 15 years old, but they can't read and write very well. They can't even operate at a standard 1 or standard 2 level. So a child with that type of background, it's easier for gang members to fool them or pull wool over their eyes and get them involved in such activity.
All right, so it seems like for me, the takeaway from this is the first thing we need to start with is education.
Yes.
I think if we start there, we might be on a good path to recovery. If we educate ourselves and we educate the children, we educate the future. Thank you both so much for joining me this morning and for sharing a little bit of insight. I know this is an ongoing conversation, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last one. So thanks again for joining us this morning. All right, guys, on that note, we take a quick break and come back with more on the Now Morning Show. We still have some hope. Hope is in education, I promise. Stay tuned.